who or what. And you have to assume that there's hope in recovery, right? In order to continue, you have to even assume that there's hope in recovery. And let me just be really clear, there is hope in recovery. There is absolute 100% hope in recovery. But how do we continue to pursue it? What or who makes us continue to pursue it? This is where I think primary purpose can play an instrumental role in our pursuit of purpose-driven prevention, treatment, and recovery. Let's get into prevention. So prevention, any 70s or 80s babies in here? Raise your hands up high. All right. You will remember this, right? Just say no. It was incredibly influential. Everybody knew it. If you're a baby from the 70s or 80s, like, you know Nancy Reagan, just say no. It was a starting point. There were so many gaps in that. There were so many holes that weren't filled, but it was a starting point. It was intentional. And it gained some practical application, right? You also remember this. Even if you're from the 90s, who's a 90s baby? Yeah, you'll remember this. This is your brain on drugs. Everybody remembers this. Why do you remember it? It was influential, right? Just say no. The egg in the cast iron skillet, like sizzling away. It was incredibly influential. The most influential tool now on the face of the planet. Anyone yell it out? The most influential tool on the face of the planet. We've never seen it like this. Social media. This is the number one by far instrumental, influential tool. We've never seen this ever in humankind history, this kind of a level of influence. Global users, 5.66 billion. Population share is 64%. Daily usage is 2.5 hours on social media. That's low. How many of you have clients and kids who've been on it for 8 hours a day? Annual growth rate is 4%. So that means next year it's not going to be 64% of the world's population. It'll be 68, and in 72, and in 76, and in 80. That's 80% of the world in what, 3 years? New users per second are added, 7.8 new users are added per second. This is by far the most influential tool on the face of the planet. Notice I didn't say the healthiest tool. Researchers have really done their work, especially the last few years, in researching into this. Specifically, compulsively viewing short-form videos that you see on Instagram, TikTok, X, whatever. The compulsive viewing of that, of scrolling through that, mirrors patterns observed in substance use disorders such as alcoholism. This should start to go, whoop. And we've seen that before. We've heard that before. That's not new. This is research within the last 2 years, which means they have a much greater data pool to drive from, to go from, than they've ever had before. This mirrors alcoholism. Individuals display reduced sensitivity to potential losses and a tendency toward more impulsive decision-making. This is just one issue out of this. Sports gambling rose from just under 5 billion in 2017 to now an astounding 165 billion in 2025. This represents, folks, a 3,300% increase in an 8-year period. alarm bells should be blaring. This will get much worse before it gets better. I could absolutely see this reaching 300 billion within the next 3 to 5 years. 300 billion. 94% of it, at least 94% of that, is all online. And you know why? Because it's right here. In anybody's hand, your kid, your 12-year-old kid, can be just as much a part of that as a 35-year-old guy. 3,300% increase. This hyperactivation reflects increased sensitivity to rapid, repeated dopamine rewards delivered by the short-form content. So when you ask your client, when you ask your child, when you ask your student why they are scrolling through that and what kind of information they are getting, what kind of issue, but why do they need that? They're going to say, well, to stay informed, right? Wrong. It's the dopamine hit. They don't even know that. They don't even realize that. That's what they're getting over and over and over again. This is science, folks. This is not just something made up. These impairments parallel other behavioral and chemical addictions. This is where we can make a substantial impact in prevention, utilizing social media. I'm not here to bash social media. There's so much good being used in it, but so much more damage. When you sit there and doom scroll, everybody knows what doom scrolling is, right? Yeah? Who does not know what doom scrolling is? No one's brave enough to raise their hand. All right, one gentleman there, thank you. Doom scrolling is when you just sit there for hours and you don't even know how much time has been wasted. Hours going through these short form videos. And it's called doom scrolling because the majority of the content is absurdly negative or wildly inappropriate. That's why it's called doom scrolling. Don't feel bad, sir. Anyone know what this 6-7 nonsense is? Don't? They don't even know. Do not try looking it up. I only realized this when my kids were home from college in December, and they were like, yeah, 6-7. And I was like, what's that? And they started laughing, ha ha ha, 6-7. So I looked it up on Google, and I felt a little dumber. Because it means nothing. And they laughed hysterically. Doom scrolling. You could spend there, and like it would be 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and all of a sudden it's 10 p.m., and you're like, where'd my life go? That's what's happening. And it is mirroring alcoholism and other forms of addiction. However, some good stuff. Oh, psychoanalysts. This was in the 60s and 70s where they were doing a study, ironically on purpose. The psychoanalysts recognized that a robust self required an enabling social foundation. Deplete the foundation, and people were often left with a depleted sense of self. Does that kind of feel like what's going on now? Where the very foundation that we're walking on is just being eroded. And we're having a depleted sense of self. Now, good stuff is going on though. Schools are now banning cell phones. Can I get an amen? Amen. I figured I wouldn't be the only one. National Educator Survey found this, that when you remove cell phones from schools, it improves student focus and in-person interaction. Auburn University study found a greater student engagement, more in-class social interaction, and better overall classroom climate. Really? Now, these things aren't like mind blowers. They're not things that say, wow, I've never thought of that before. We knew this before the studies came out. But these are studies that are now going inside and figuring this stuff out and realizing, hey, there's something to this. The Florida School District ban initially caused a disciplinary spike. I just find that, I guess, humorous. However, by year 2, suspensions returned to normal and student test scores started to rise. Now, 2 and 3% aren't that great, but what about year 3? What about year 5? What about year 10? Where those scores should start to increase simply as a result of removing a phone from a classroom. The RAND report, most U.S. schools now restrict cell phone use Principals overwhelmingly believe these rules improve school climate, reduce cyberbullying, and curb inappropriate phone use. And I think for me, one word just kind of sums up all of this initiative that we've been going through the last 2 years. And that word is duh. Like I could have told you this 20 years ago. My wife and I, this was our fight for years. Get those phones out of the school. And again, I'm not here to bash social media. I'm not here to bash school cell phones. There's practical use. There's intentional application with this. And ironically, these studies suggest the same thing. Alternative supports, digital literacy education, mental health resources, structured tech use may be just as important as restrictions themselves. Isn't that interesting? That these studies didn't just say, chop your arm off and let it go. They were saying restrict the use, but also have structured, intentional boundaries so that you can have some practical results as a result of that. That's what we're seeing. So that brings us to our first challenge. And this is specifically in relation to social media use. You could use this for your clients, you can use this for your patients, you can use this for your students. If there's administrators in here, you can use this for your entire organization, you can use this for yourself. First challenge is this: use social media as a platform to ignite your primary purpose. And what is your primary purpose? Every individual can bring real, intrinsic value into another individual's life today. Value. How often are we just getting crushed with nothing but junk in our lives? When was the last time somebody brought real value into your own life? Think about how good that is. When someone brings value into your life. Challenge 1, use social media as your platform to ignite your primary purpose, because as you ignite your own primary purpose, you will be igniting someone else's and someone else's. That's just how things work, especially with social media. This is a huge area that we can impact prevention. Challenge number 2. Let me just warn you that challenge number 2 is much more difficult than challenge number 1. And I warn you because I don't want anyone coming up to me afterwards and saying, you should have warned us. Challenge number 2 is this: intentionally limit your personal use of that outside of that specific number 1 scope. And I underline personal because so much of our jobs now are related to AI. And so utilizing social media, utilizing media to bring out, and that's fine, that's awesome. So much good is happening with the use of social media. Limit your personal use. Because again, you will see you're sitting there doom scrolling, 45 minutes rolls by like that. And you're like, what just happened? So I utilize this one question. I've utilized it for myself. Just so you know, I'm not the kettle calling the pot black, or what is that? The pot calling the kettle black? I used this exact question that I'm about to bring up with my 21-year-old son a couple of weeks ago, when he was sitting there scrolling through all this stuff, and I asked him this question: how does that benefit you? This is a personal question that you can ask yourself, you can have your students ask this question. How does that content that I'm just scrolling through, that I just spent the last 8 hours in, how does that benefit me? What is it doing? When I asked my son that, the initial thing was, and he's 21 years old, he was like, well, I just want to stay informed. And I was like, well, what have you done about that? Have you gone to your have you gone to your legislators? Have you reached out to folks? Have you gone to DC? Have you gone to Harrisburg, our state capital? Have you talked to people? Have you started to run for office? What are you doing to change it? He was like, nothing. Then what does it benefit you? And I'm not saying walk in oblivion. This has nothing to do with oblivion. Stay up to date, stay knowledgeable. But when you start to feel yourself get sucked in, how's that benefit you? How's that that's one of the most powerful questions that we can ask. Now we get into treatment. And treatment is something that people are now coming to you looking for, because they are in that situation that they need support, they need guidance, they need direction. Practical supported choice. Motivational interviewing is one of those things. We have a lot of motivational interviewer folks that utilize this? Yes. Motivational interviewing really simply allows someone the opportunity to find their own motivation and reason for change. That's a guided process that allows them the ability, that gives them the ability to start to find their own motivation and their own reasoning for change. It puts them in the driver's seat. You're also being very intentional with that direction, giving them guidance and support. It gives them autonomy, and it gives them those practical next steps, but it also highlights gaps in behavior and overall where they are going, where they are headed with that. And it gives them that understanding. This was a study done